Hey, what's up, everybody? Clayton gets here with Proximity Podcast, joined once again by this hottie. My wife, Stephanie Gets. Oh my gosh, I was telling somebody this morning that she was having a rough time, and she said, "How are you doing?" I was like, "I'm great." She said, "I'm not quite great," and I was like, "I woke up this morning and turned over, and I had the most beautiful, sexy, smart, incredible mom partner lying next to me. Like life is good, man. But anyway, that's another podcast. So we are joined today by somebody that Stephanie and I recently just met, and we it's kind of been a mentor from afar. He doesn't know this, but it's just fun to talk to people that know Rich Lennon very well, and what he's doing and what he's done, and the value that he provides. And so just super excited to be joined by Rich Lennon today. We're going to tell you a little bit about him, and then we're going to jump in and get to know you more. So thank you for carving out some
thanks
time.
for having me.
You're busy.
Yes. So Rich Lennon comes from an entrepreneurial tradition, having worked initially with his parents in their family business before branching out into his own ventures. With a strong foundation in real estate and a commitment to continuous growth, Rich has become a prominent figure in the industry. His passion for teaching and giving back to the community is evident in his involvement as a championship-winning coach of youth soccer for over 2 decades. That's amazing. And his active volunteerism in his children's school. Rich holds a BS in engineering from Virginia Tech, which provides him with a unique analytical perspective in the real estate landscape. His vision for RVA Property Solutions is built upon the principles of creating a win-win situation and empowering individuals to succeed in the real estate market. With his expertise and commitment to providing value, Rich is excited to share his knowledge and guide you and us on the path to real estate success. And so if you're not from the Richmond area and you start getting into this investing real estate world, Rich's name is commonly thrown out there. I'm sure you know that.
I've been around. We're just saying I'm old is what I'm hearing.
No, and very successful, and it's thrown around for a reason. And so we went to an event. It was a real estate, it was a mastermind event with Jenny, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Hall.
Yeah, but there was also a ring.
But there was a ring event,
well.
which Rich will share a little bit more about in a little bit. And he was there, and we had the first time opportunity to meet and be connected with you. And so I believe that everything happens for a reason, and there are no coincidences. So Clayton and I are both super grateful that we had the opportunity to meet you. And now here you are.
Yeah, it was great to meet you guys. I think we were standing outside, like on the second floor, Dover Hall, checking out. That's a unique castle.
Yes,
that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
that
it was
great.
really, really cool.
Just checking out the
You're actually
architecture.
getting a tour of your room.
Yeah, which is a big room, right?
It's huge.
Like 2,500 square feet or something.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So as we kick this off today, I'd love if you would share a little bit about yourself and take us back to your childhood and what brought you down the road to real estate investing and now lending.
Sure. Let's see. I don't even know where to begin on that. I moved around a lot as a kid. My dad was an engineer, so that's kind of where I get my engineering background. Probably goes back to my grandfather. And we moved around. He worked for a chemical company, and they would buy plants. And so he was head of one of the teams of engineers. They would buy something, we would move. They'd work on it for 3 years, and then they'd buy something else, and we'd move. So I lived in a lot of the southern states, and then ultimately California. My mom was orphaned at 16. She lost both her parents within a year or something, right? And that was, I don't know, that had to be like early 60s or something like that. So, and so pretty normal lifestyle. Like my dad, engineer. So he wasn't really close with his kids. And so I unfortunately didn't get to know him maybe till I was out of college. And then he got to know me as a person, but then he died early in life. And so kind of missed out on the dad thing, so I know you were asking earlier, like what motivates you and what gets you going. And, you made me start to think about that. I hadn't really thought about it too much of, what is the drive? And there's probably a drive within me to go prove something every day. And it's probably the way I was raised. But I really hadn't thought about that. But that's me in a nutshell. And so I got an engineer degree at Virginia Tech because that's what you did. I didn't particularly love engineering. I have the mind for it. I was born with it, but like was never my passion. So I was much more of a natural entrepreneur. My dad had wanted to be an entrepreneur his whole life. He was an engineer, and then ultimately he quit and he started his own business. It was the window treatment business, and that business did really well for a bunch of years. And but then, he got displaced. And as an adult, I can think back on what happened, and he wasn't aware of what was going on. But like Home Depot came, and now you could do like next day blinds, and you could get all the blind stuff really cheap. And so all those mom and pops went out of business over like a period of 2 or 3 years. And so. But I always saw him doing that. And my uncle was an entrepreneur. Both my uncles were entrepreneurs. And I just had it in me. So I was a very, very short-term engineer. And then I was a soccer coach for a long time. I loved soccer, and I was coaching. And then I always tell people it was like a plumbing business where I would get contracts for local clubs and I'd charge them $125 an hour. And then I would get a college kid to go run the camps, and they get $25, $35 an hour, and I got the arbitrage. Exactly the way a plumbing business works. And so I did that for a long time. I really enjoyed it. And then, my wife came to me one day and said, "Okay, we're moving to Richmond." And I was like, "What? We're doing what?" And she'd worked at AOL, and then they wanted to move her to New York. She didn't want to go to New York. I didn't want to raise my kids in New York City. So she took a job at Capital One. And, apparently she found out at the very last moment that, it was in Richmond. I'm looking at you. And she said, "Hey, because we've known each other since we were 16. We didn't get married until we were our mid 30s.
Oh, wow.
But we knew each other as friends our whole life." And she's like, "I remember all those times I supported you and all the crazy things you do." Like you called it the 20s. And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, we're moving to Richmond." So we moved down here, and it was buy a home a year, then buy 2 homes a year, then buy 1 home a month, then 2 month, and then 3 a month. And then I just built from there. It was rather long-winded, but that's how I got it.
No, that's perfect. I love that.
So I'm just curious. So why? Like, why did you guys start investing to begin with?
Well, we had both work. We're both grinders, and we wanted to go to the next level in wealth. And we just understood inherently that real estate was a great vehicle. So when we started, we certainly weren't pros at it. Our first couple of rentals were, okay, we live here and then we buy the next one, and we don't have to sell that one to buy the next one. So now we're landlords. And we just started to understand that we were building the wealth. And then the wife used Richmond's ability to cash flow as one of the reasons that we should move to Richmond.
Smart woman.
Yeah, she is. She is the smart one in the family. So that was an attractive thing. And we can't, I lived in Northern Virginia right outside DC for 25 years. And you can't really cash flow in that market. Houses are too expensive and you can rent. So, but in Richmond, in these secondary markets, at the time, and this was like 2011, 2012, you could still cash flow down here. Now it's a little difficult again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We're gonna unpack that. And so I want to back up for 1 minute, Rich, because and I just want the listeners to understand this as well. You said you wanted to go to the next level financially, right? Why?
Well, I think there's a bunch of reasons. I think the cliche one is I wanted to leave a legacy for my kids. And I think that was part of it. And we wanted to build a better life. My father's side, they were coal miners. On my dad's side, so they came from coal miners. He was really the first one to kind of break out, and his brother did as well, kind of break out, go get educated. Then they end up being like middle class, and we knew it was a responsibility to then take that one step further. Both my wife and I are very diligent about that. I'm not sure that's the real reason. I think it's because I'm a very curious person. I'm naturally curious. I like to build things. And so I would build soccer teams and I would build businesses. And when I got into the mechanics of it, I just loved the building part of it. And it just filled something within me.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. Brendan used to always say, be curious about everything, everybody. And I asked that question because it's you said this kind of pre-show here. We're gonna unpack this, Rich. But if they can do it, so can I. Right? You said if he can do it, if she can do it, why can't I?
Yes.
But a lot of people look at that and they don't, for whatever reason, they don't take action. And I don't know if it's because they
don't believe they can.
They just don't have whatever. Like something is missing that keeps them from taking the next step. Right? I keep thinking that Tim's going to not show up one day because we have so many investors on the podcast. Tim's over there taking notes, and he's going to call in sick one day because he's out there buying houses. But no. So okay. So you come down to Richmond and you start investing. And can you just take us unpack that? Like, so what did that process look like for you? And it started in 2013.
Let's see. I think I probably bought my first, as a real estate investor, that Richmond. The things I did in Nova, I was just kind of accidental landlord. So 2012 would be my bet.
You know what's interesting, honey? Lori Eubanks started in 20. Do you know Lori?
I knew Lori Eubanks very well.
So Lori started in 2012, 2013.
It was a good time, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of business. Sometimes you get lucky, right?
Yeah.
And the market's not always the same. As I've grown, I've been conscious of the fact, hey, did I hit a double or did I wake up on second base, right? And there's part of that where the market
you got to be in the game to get lucky, though.
You have to.
Yeah.
That's right.
But I want to answer why I think most people don't. They don't take action. It's because it's the people they surround themselves with. You have to surround yourself with people who say yes. Like, oh, I'm going to go do this crazy thing. And you want to be around people that say, yes, okay, let's talk about it. Let's unpack that a little bit. Yeah. But you need people that say yes. So
good.
And the people who say no, you kind of have to push them aside. So good. And so your circle changes.
So that's the whole concept of this podcast, proximity podcast, because that's what we believe.
That's the proximity. Yeah.
Proximity is
getting nearness in space and time.
Getting in the room with people who are where you want to be.
Yeah. People that'll say yes. So it was Jim Rohn used to say that he hangs out with miracle workers. Right? You have a problem? No problem. Not for us. Not a problem for us. We'll figure it out. Yep. We'll figure it out. We can get it done. Right?
Yep.
That's so well said. Yep. Okay. So what was the problem? Like, how did you? So you bought a house, right?
Yeah, because you mentioned before that you wouldn't have done it the same way today that you did when you started off, as far as when you were purchasing your first.
Well, there's a lot of on the road. There's a lot of mistakes for sure, and. So, but on that regard, I had enough money that I bought my first house with my own cash, and I renovated it, and we'd actually bought two with our own cash. In retrospect, that was a mistake. Cash is so valuable. If you have it, you can't let it go. And even I was too stingy. I was like, oh, I don't want to borrow money and pay an interest rate on money. That's a huge mistake, in my opinion, because as you go down the road, you need your capital. You need your capital to bail you out, because you're going to get in trouble. You're going to have ideas that aren't successful. You're going to pay $15,000 for a marketing campaign that someone has the wrong phone number on. And you're going to...
It sounds like that's happened to you.
Stories I could tell. But you're going to need the capital. And I didn't know that. And so I actually, in the first year or two figuring that out, I didn't grow as fast as I could have grown. It took me 3 or 4 years to the point where I was buying a lot of real estate.
Did you figure that out on your own, or did you get in the room with somebody who was like,
look what I just wrote down. Who was your mentor?
Yeah. Did you get in the room with somebody who was like, why are you doing it this way? You need to be doing it this way. And like, how did you?
So there was a network that I got introduced to, and I got introduced to one of the locals, Jim Ingersoll, who had originally gone out to that group, and he's like, hey, this is a good group. And I went out, I found them, and these were people that just kind of blew my mind on the financial side. They were just so creative, and I was so boilerplate and just doing it. And these are the people that taught me how to do joint ventures and buying things in trust and my asset protection. And they were all older, right? They were the gray hairs in the room.
They're the ones that have the wisdom.
They have the wisdom and they have the freedom
and experience.
And they're not competitors. Yeah. So when you and it was out of my market as well. So if I'm talking to someone who's doing all their business in Austin, Texas, they could give two hoots about giving me everything that they have about their secrets to the world. Yeah. And I just got so lucky and so blessed. And a lot of those people I grew up with in the business. We were talking earlier, like Connor Steinbrook was in that original, very small circle. And and I've just surrounded myself with those people ever since. And I am intentional about masterminds. I am intentional about travel. I think if you want to get to know someone, go travel with them. Do they wake up and are they mean? Are they, get to know them? And it's been a huge win for me.
Yeah, we tell people all the time, same thing, Rich. I mean, we just would not be where we are today if we didn't spend the money and the time getting outside of this, our cocoons and traveling and going to different masterminds all over the.
Yeah, we wish we could do it more. We're kind of in that busy season with where our kids are in so many sports. We're limited in the amount that we can attend right now. If we could do more, we would do so many more. For that reason.
Okay, so you get in the room, you're hanging out with Jim and others, and so when did you start taking it to, you bought one here, you bought one there. When did it become a business?
Yeah.
I would say maybe I thought it was a business on day one, right? Okay. But in retrospect, we weren't, like the processes weren't there. Like none of the stuff that makes a successful business was there. Really started building that stuff out maybe 2 to 3 years into the business. And it really, it came down to, you mentioned it, of if I saw someone else doing it, I wanted to do it better. That's in me. I'm a competitor. And so that was part of it. I remember people like, oh, I'm buying 2 houses a month. I'm like, I can do that. Like this guy or gal, like it's and then one time there was a person in the room. He said, I'm doing 10 a month is what he said. And they were doing like 130 deals a year. And I knew the person. I'm like, no way, this is not. And so I never got there. I never got to my 10. Right. And I would, we did, I would think the average is probably 4 or 5 a month for a bunch of years. Yeah. And our highest was 8. And every time at scaling, we could do a whole other podcast on, but as you scale, of course, you break everything all the time. And I was one man shop. Like my wife and I are married, and she's, of course, if you're in a business like this, your spouse is involved, but she has her W-2 job and we have the kids. And so it's really, most of it was alone. And so I broke it a lot.
So is your wife still W-2, or she
no,
with you?
I joke with her. She quiet quit on me, and
quiet quit.
You're home again.
That is exactly what happened. It was because she was working as a consultant. She's very successful in her career, like an executive for Capital One, AOL, very successful. And she was in a little boutique, consulting firm for banks, and bank regulation is her stick. And God, she was one of the top people there. They were going through troubles because banks were pulling back last year. I don't know if you guys remember, but they weren't spending out the money. So now the consultants, like the business dries up. And her boss is like, well, she went to her boss and said, well, I'll work part-time until we get this big contract coming through in a couple months, and then, we'll come back. And so she said she's going to work part-time, which I thought was like 75%. But now she's like, oh, no, I'm going to work 4 or 5 hours a month or a week. And she was just around the house all the time. And I was like, aren't you going back to work? And then she's like, oh yeah, like next week we're talking about a thing. And finally I had to sit her down. And I'm like, you're not going back to work, are you? So her passion now is, and she's an author. So she's an author, and her passion is teaching financial literature to children.
Really?
Her parents did a good job of it. They took it to one level. We think we've come up with another level. Like our kids lend money, and they're 10, 12, and 14.
Did she create a curriculum for this?
Yeah, she's got a curriculum. She writes books, and she's creating content and podcasts, and so that's her passion now.
Okay.
And it's really great.
She's a new customer.
She's a new customer. That's great. She will love
awesome.
that.
Yeah. And what is her name? How can we
Stephanie.
find it?
Stephanie Brooks is the name that she goes by.
Does she have this content online to be purchased? Is it ready to be purchased?
Yeah. So you can go to Amazon and you can purchase it.
We'll put that in the link.
Oh, you'll love that.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Okay. So And I know this is probably going to be a little elementary for you, but I just want to make sure, because there are going to be people watching this who are like, okay, like, can you just continue to unpack this a little bit more? So you said you used your own money, so you just paid cash for the first couple of deals.
Yeah.
Okay, and then what did you do?
I borrowed the money.
Okay.
I had an epiphany one day, and I said, what was it? Okay, it was, how many houses can I buy if I have all the money I need? And the answer is all of them. And so I said, I need more money. And I had to learn how to move other people's money. And if you're going to scale and you're going to move, what you're really doing is you're moving other people's money for them. And they probably move it at different stages. So the old gray hairs in the room, like they want to sit on the beach. They don't want to do any work. They just want their money to work. Right. I'd like to be there. Like that's fantastic life for me. When their ultimate customer is the flipper. When you flip a home, let's say you're putting your $25,000 into the deal yourself, through sweat equity, maybe you're making 115% return in 6 months on that 25. And so now you're growing that, right? So you're really just growing money, right? And so people will be happy to take your product, which is the sweat equity you do in a value add situation on real estate. They are happy to give you the money in a secured spot, nothing safe, but in a secured spot. And there's a whole industry of people who will lend you the money. And now you borrow their money and then you do the work. Now you're not out of pocket a whole lot of money. And now instead of being able to do 2, now I can do 8. And now my money stretches farther. Yeah. And it's an expense of I have to pay for the money now. And that was a mental hurdle for me for a while.
Yeah.
So I have a question about that, because I'm thinking back. We had a podcast not that long ago, and the gentleman said, your network is your net worth.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I'm assuming you must have been in a place in life where you already had relationships with the people that would lend you that money and trusted you, because they have to trust you that you're going to do what you say and earn them that money back. Otherwise, they wouldn't be lending it to you to begin with. So you were going to individuals, not to banks, right? You had these relationships. How did you, if you're speaking to somebody that's like they're your 20-year-old self, and they're like, well, I'd love to do that. I don't know anybody that has that kind of money. How did you develop these relationships that got you to that place? And what did you had to perform to earn that trust?
Yeah, well, you have to be able to perform. That's key. Before you start taking someone's money, you have to be able to perform. But I found that I would just talk about things and then the money would come. And I'll give you some examples. So I live in Chesterfield County, and a couple, this is a long time ago, but I was sitting around a campfire with my neighbors, and they were talking about the fact that they're going to raise the real estate taxes, and what that was going to mean for everybody. And so we were having that discussion. And as we were going through it, I was like, hey, we need to raise the real estate taxes, which is contrarian to everybody else who's paying the taxes. Hey, we need the schools. It's important. Chesterfield's growing. We need it. And one of the things I said is like, hey man, I got a lot of houses in Chesterfield County. Raising the taxes means a lot more to me than it does to you sitting at the fire pit. So I went home the next day. I went home that night. The next day, I got a call. I said, hey, I got a couple $100,000. I've been wanting to be an investor for a while, but I'm not. Could you move my money? I said, yes. And that was my first one. My from
the guy at the fire pit.
From the guy. Actually, it was his wife that was at the fire pit. And I recalled back, she didn't say a word all night. Like she didn't say anything.
Just taking it in.
She just, And so I wasn't pitching to anybody about anything. I was just, this is what I feel about. And I had another good lender. I got him at my kid's birthday party that they were at. Not mine, but another one. Like, those little bouncy houses? And so my kids were young at the time, still young. But of course, as a parent, you have to stand right there at the bouncy house because they might eat them or something. I don't know.
Or they'll fall out.
Or flow away. And I was just talking to some guy. I'm like, well, I was like, what do you do? I was like, oh, I'm a real estate investor. I buy a lot of properties. And I was just talking to him, killing the time, making sure my kid didn't die. And he said, well, how much interest could you get on something like that? And I gave him a number, and he's like, I would do that. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's great. And so I got another one that way. And
at the bouncy house.
At the bouncy house. Yeah.
Yeah, money's not hard to find.
It's easy.
Yeah.
The money is actually the easy part.
Yeah.
That's what I've been told.
So let's talk about the hard part, because as you said something a couple minutes ago about you have to be able to do the deal, to do well before somebody will give you money. So do you want to comment on that? Like if you're like looking to do your first deal, and I think Jared Davis what was the number that he threw out there that he thought you really needed to have? Was it 25,000 or 50,000 or something? It was a number that he thought that you had to have put aside to buy your first property. Let's say in Richmond, Virginia. What would you say to that? If you're just getting started.
Yeah, that's a pretty good number. When people say that you can do it with absolutely none of your own money, that's true, but it's not true at the beginning, right? It's not true until you really get to prove the model, and so it's rare that you can get in. Now, you can get in for free if it's a really good deal, right? If I'm a lender and there's so much equity that it cannot go bad on me, then I'm okay with you having no money in the deal.
Okay.
But I have found that it's important to have your own money in the deal, particularly money that someone didn't give to you that like you earned. Like I worked for 5 years for that 25 grand to be sitting there. Now I'm not going to lose it. You want that
Good point. It's a great point.
Yeah.
And that'll help you. Like, so people charge get it with nothing. It's a little bit more difficult.
So it's basically like, save your money to start, prove what you can do with your own money first. Then you have earned the right to go and ask somebody if you can now use theirs.
There are a lot of these gurus online that I've always felt you have to be careful with people selling these programs that you can go buy 50 houses with no money and no experience, and so that's good. That's good advice, Rich.
It sounds too good.
So so let's talk about the hard part, because you obviously you scaled your business. Finding the deals, because everybody wants to know like finding deals. So can you unpack that as much as you can?
Well, finding deals is a piece of it, and that changes where you are on the cycle. Like I was talking before, when I started buying in 2012, I could just go to HUD home stores and there would be like 10 homes, and I'd be like, I want that one. Wow. And so it was not difficult, and the liquidity of the banks was tight, and so they wouldn't lend, and so it was harder for like an investor to go buy. It's less competition as well. That has certainly changed over the years. And now, and to scale, you have to have predictable deal flow. If you're like, hey, I'm gonna buy 35 next year, you have to have an exact model of what that looks like to get the deal flow. You have to have really good KPIs, which is like, I'm gonna spend this much money, and this much money is gonna give me a phone call. And I'll tell you, in Richmond, that number, it's about $250 for a phone call. And that phone call, by the way, might be, go kick rocks, stop emailing me. Or like it might be a really nasty lead. You're gonna spend like $3,200 ish in the market to get a deal in Richmond these days. And you can do it through pay-per-click, and you can do it through direct mail, and you can do it in a number of ways. But I have a unique perspective. I get to see a lot of the local real estate investor business, and I understand the KPIs over a bunch of channels. And that's a pretty accurate number. So if you say, I'm going to want to scale and want 3 deals a month, well, it costs you 10 grand. And then there's a lag. So if you're going to flip it, it takes 8 months to flip a home in Richmond. Like it can be done faster, but I will tell you from what I see, it takes the average person 8 months.
Is that because they're doing it themselves, or do they have contracting crews coming in?
Yeah, they have contracting crews, and one of the problems is permitting, particularly in the city of Richmond, might take you 2 to 3 months. And getting things inspected has been a problem, and also the days on market for the sell has increased. We've had a bump in the last couple of weeks, but for a while it slowed down, and so I certainly see that across my lending portfolio. But it takes about 8 months. So if you're going to say, okay, $10,000 a month, but I'm not getting my first paycheck for 8 months. And so now it's like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, you're up to 80 grand. And so that's one piece of it, which is the deal flow, but it can be bought. You can buy it. The other part is, I think, very difficult, which is the people managing process. If you're buying
if you're buying 4 or 5 homes a month, it's chaos. It's chaos. You're closing all the time on both sides, and you really are running a construction company. And the construction company, in my personal opinion, is the hardest company to run. I am personally not very good at the construction company. I do not like that part. And so I was never great at it. That is probably why I could not push through to do more than 10, because I didn't want to really get in and organize the construction business, if I'm just being honest.
Did you have somebody that was helping you with that aspect, or you were doing that all on your own?
No, we had full-time employees that we paid a lot of money. But like, I always say, roofers are always drunk and painters are always smoking something they shouldn't be. And you're chasing those cats over 9 construction jobs.
Yeah.
And so, shoot me. Like, I'm a person who's up and ready to go and attacking the world. As you build the organization, that is not what's happening. At the
Yeah.
So,
on the other side of things.
so I think that is the hard part. Because you can buy the deal flow as long as you can be a decent salesperson.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too. It's when don't people find you too eventually? Like when they know that you're out there doing your thing and you're producing, results. Don't deals just tend to find you?
Yes.
Yeah.
People will do deals with you because they like you, for sure. People will do deals more so if you just do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. Really, business is all that. Answer your phone and do what you say you're going to do. That's about
Hello.
it. Like 95% of it cannot make that barrier.
Yeah, right.
And
which is great for the rest of them, for the 5%.
yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah. So, I forgot. I lost my train of thought. Because I was just thinking about, why can't people just get up and do it?
Yeah. So it's.
But yeah, they give you deals. They'll call you, get those relationships, and show up with the money on time, make their business better. That's one of the keys, because you remember
Add
that person
value.
scaling. Yeah. You get that wholesaler who's trying to do 2 or 3 a month. It's the same with when I'm a money lender. The value I bring is making it so the business person's job is easy. They can count on it. So if you're going to sell it to Rich Lennon or one of the other buyers, you're done. You can turn it off and you can go on and you can keep building your business.
Yeah.
And so if you create that environment, you get as much as you want.
Yeah. No, that's so good. So talk about did you ever get into wholesaling yourself?
That's what I was just going to ask that question.
Yeah. So, of course, I've wholesaled properties. When they come in, when you're doing a high volume, you're gonna let some of those deals go. As I've gotten older and lazier and I hate construction by any metric of it. I'm still in it now. I still own the construction business, although I don't want to. But I'm starting to market again as I see an opportunity growing in Richmond, and I will almost exclusively wholesale. I won't, I will leave money on the table happily for someone else to come in and do that construction job, so that it's not Rich Lennon.
Okay, so is that's the main reason, is the construction? It's
Ease
so
of
much
business.
faster.
It's really fast.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a friend, or an acquaintance out of, he is in Arizona, I believe, but he's created a whole, and I know that these businesses exist all over the country, but they do 4,000 or 5,000 a year.
Yeah, it's a lot.
All wholesale, and it's 100% wholesale, and it's probably exactly because of everything that you just said. That's really interesting.
But I will say that it's important to go through the process of it, because the only reason that I can be a successful lender that I enjoy now is because I can walk into a home and I've bought a couple hundred rounds. I've done the 100 flips. So I can just see it and be like, I got it. And that was invaluable to me now. So now I don't have to go through it. But I do think that was a big part of the future success. And I didn't know that at the time, only looking back.
Yeah. And okay, so the evolution of this thing, so you figure out how to scale, you put your team together, and I thought it was interesting. You said you had a number of virtual assistants. You had 2 full-time employees, like non-virtual in-house.
Yeah, I think at the most we had 3. We had 3 full-time.
Okay.
And then some part-times with the marketing and stuff. We used some of that in-house. But I got lucky. We always get lucky, right? But I was on to VAs really 3 or 4 years before everybody else. And I found a way to hire them. I still hire them that way. And it's been really successful for me. And at one point we had like 14 full-time VAs. And
can you want to share that?
You
found a way to hire them?
Oh yeah, sure. I just start at the end. I want the top 1/2 of 1% of the population. So I started with that premise. And so I built a funnel, and the idea was that 200 people would enter the funnel and one would come out. And therefore I get my 0.5%. And so what I did was I posted a very complicated digital trail across the internet. And this is so me. And
This is the engineering.
and
I'm already out.
but like the first one was like a really detailed job posting, but like halfway through it said, ignore everything that this says and go here. Right. And so, because everybody says, oh, I'm detail oriented. But these are people who are going to read your documents. Like you. So if you would like give me, like, we didn't even have a place that their resume could come in. They were just like click and click. And like, that's not your employee. You don't want that one. And so then we would send them, the first thing is like a video. It's me. It's not a very good video, but it's like, hey, I live in Richmond, Virginia. I'm in the Eastern time zone of the United States. I work from 9 to 5. And so I gave them everything about me, and then it cuts off in the middle, and then it tests them on everything that was there. And so now they take a test, and then they apply to the test, and then an autoresponder tells them another task. And now I'd have them do amortization schedules. Do a 15-year amortization schedule at 8% and tell me what my payment 156 is, right? And so it was this complicated thing. And remember, they're not being guaranteed a job here. Like they don't know. Although I would say at the beginning, it's a full-time job. At the time, it was $6 an hour, which is a really good VA pay. You get an executive level for $6 an hour. And so I just made it very complicated. I wanted them to drop out. Every time they thought they got to the end, I would pull the rug out. And the final one was when you'd get to like 90% would get somewhere, and the final ones would always fall out. I was like, oh, okay. Now I want you to write a 500-word essay in your own language. Then I want you to film it. And then I want you to call me on this telephone number. But I was really doing, I was testing their technology. Are you going to be able to do the things I need in the business?
Wow.
Can you call the United States? And so whoever drops out of the funnel, I've always given them a job. And I have no communication with them until then. If they call me because you can find me. If they call me, they're out because they can't follow the rules. Like these are the rules. I need an employee that'll follow the rules. And I always ask them the same question. When that first time I talked to them, I was like, why did you do this? This is stupid. Like, why did you do this? And every one of them gave the same answer. I was curious to see where it was going to go.
Yeah.
And so you have someone who's curious, problem solves, detail oriented, has all the technology. It is
so smart.
Yeah, that's so.
And I don't have to pay anybody else. Like there's no company or
did
whatever.
that all on your own.
Yeah. Well, I was, in fairness, it was part of that financial friends group, right? There was a guy, his name was Steve, and he was kind of got me onto this idea of like how to do. He was also an engineer, and you can imagine we geeked out over one.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Okay, so did you? This is real. I'm being selfish here, but was there an operating system like a Traction or EOS or something that you used for your business?
Yeah, I still use EOS.
You use EOS.
I still use it today.
Yeah,
and I've been using it maybe 6 or 7 years. It's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah.
And we still operate through those principles.
Yeah.
And I train students, and all of them. I think I run the level 10 EOS with them, and it is the number one thing they always get back to me and say, that's the thing that changed my business.
Yep.
And you have to have an operating system.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and agreed. We moved to Traction a few years ago, and it changed our world. Go ahead, honey.
So you, how many homes when you first got started in this did you hold versus flip? Oh yeah, you don't have to say the number, but like percentage-wise.
That's a great question. It's probably at times it's probably 1 to 1, and then at other times it's keep 2, sell 1. You know, I always tell people you flip to eat, and you hold to make wealth. And because all the money that we flipped, we burnt. Like it was burnt through all the marketing, through all the employees. Like we had to flip. And I looked at it as this: I have to flip to pay the employees to get the rentals. And so I wanted to, and by the way, that's a really good tax strategy, right? Because you're not making a lot of money when you're taking the active income and then burning through it with all your expenses. like you're not making a lot of money on your P&L. You might have added $1 million of equity, but you don't pay any taxes on that. And I exercised that strategy for a long time.
So, so you basically flipped to pay your employees, is what you said, and you held for wealth.
Yep.
So you're obviously, it must be the engineer brain that you have, where it sounds like you were very good at reading the market and knowing like when's the right time. And I'd asked you before the podcast, like right now, is it harder to buy to hold right now versus buying to flip? And you said
it is, yeah. And I would say the strategies will have to change. I think people wanting the interest rates to come down, I don't know that that's a good thing, actually. But I will tell people where the wealth is right now. The wealth are all the 30-year notes that were created, call it from March of 2020 through, November, December of 2021, something like that. Like the 18-month period, the Fannie Mae was creating those 3% notes, and they're out there. And you go get the notes. Like you can take properties in a lot of ways. You don't have to buy them with cash. You can take them subject to, you can buy them on land contracts. But the hidden wealth is you got to go find those.
the notes with the low percentage.
That's right. And when, like, so if I were looking, and I tell people this all the time, if I were looking, I'd be looking for houses that were bought in 2000, call it 19, and then resold within a year in 2020, 2021, because you're looking, particularly it was bought with cash, so you're looking for a flip, right? You're looking for a flip that someone flips, so all the 20-year systems are done. Hopefully it has a new roof. Hopefully it has new windows. Like you're looking for that, and it's probably a first-time home buyer that has that note right now, and they have some equity, and you could give them cash for the equity, or sometimes they don't have equity, and maybe they run into issues or whatever, but I think there's a gold mine there.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
Go get those notes.
Yeah, I love that. I hope everybody heard that because I just wrote that down.
Yeah, I was too.
Yeah,
They were
that's
writing
good
it in the
stuff.
same document.
We should write you a check after this.
Now, people gave it to me, and I think that's part of it. You just have to give it back.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
I think
Absolutely.
I really do believe that.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. So you, I want to find out the transition from, when you got to a place where you're like, you know what, I want to lend. I want to lend. So, you're building your business. You get up to 8. You said 8 properties in a month was kind of your highest. And let's actually start here, because I asked you pre-podcast as well. I said, what's the number? Like, what's the number where, as an investor, you can be like, I'm good. I'm good. I don't have to grind as hard. I can, where the stress kind of goes away, and you can, if you wanted to, right? I've always, thought it would be, for most people, working because you love what you do so much, like it's not really working because you want to, not because you have to. So what was that point for you? And then we'll get into the lending.
Yeah, sure. I think that number for everybody, I think everybody in America is this number. I think it's $10,000 a month post-tax. That is not a jet set life. That is a good life. Like pre-tax, it's a W-2 employee earning like 165, 170, something like that. And the average income in America is right around 65, 70 right now. It's up a little bit. So that's a great life. And that is a life that you could be done. And so when you hit that number, that should be a number. Now, my experience has been that the person who gets to that number, because that's a hard number to get to. People like blow some smoke, but that's a hard number to get to. But once the same person who got to 10 doesn't want to stop, right? Because they enjoyed the journey, because they went through a lot of hardship. And so now they got it out. They got it ironed out. That's right. And so, but I think it's $10,000 a month is freedom. My issue has been, I've always set the financial goals, and every time I achieve it, I decide it's not enough. And I don't know, like, I apologize to my wife in advance, but that's just something that's in me. And
Because you get to the top of that mountain and then you see another mountain.
Yeah, they're like,
Oh, there's another one.
Yeah.
I was talking to this lady and she's getting 200 a year. I got to beat her, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly
I
right.
thought this was the peak.
Yeah.
So, and I'm going to, just in the interest of time, we're going to jump around just a little bit, Rich, because I want to get to lending, and I want to get to your network as well. And we'll make sure that the links for all of this,
Sure.
any links that you want, Tim, we'll pop those in the in our channels. So, what strategy? I want to make sure that I didn't miss this question. What strategy did you use to pay? Did you use any strategies to pay your properties off faster, or did you just simply let the tenants pay off the properties?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, we played a lot around with the numbers. My wife's really smart with numbers, and she was really into for a while, hey, if we pay this down faster, like how does that work? If you get to a certain level, and so you're buying, and I don't think it has to be very high level. I think at 20 rentals, 30 rentals, it doesn't have to be that high of a level. As you move pieces around on a chessboard in a way that I hadn't thought of before. I felt like, I got to get my free and clear like in this way. But I've found smart leverage is good, and I don't refi very often. I like my loan to value pretty low because I don't trust banks inherently. But I actually, you need to have a couple free and clears. You need to have that because sometimes you need money, and so you want to call up your financial friend. You're like, hey, I need $100,000. Could you? Yeah, let's just throw a note and deed of trust on this property and get my $100,000. So I think a couple free and clear, but now because I just find that there's equity in the properties as they grow over time, and when you want money, you just go get it.
So like, you're not selling properties. You'll just go pull and just keep going.
Yeah. Well, I've been selling the last 2 years
because of prices.
Well, prices, and so when the government, it's a business decision as well. When the government, a lot of decisions, the government paid all the renters for, not all of them, but I would say 25% of my portfolio by the end of COVID was getting 100% U.S. government subsidy. Virginia did a really good job of getting the money out. They didn't get it out quick, but they got it out.
Yeah.
And so they paid. But what happened was people weren't paying rent for like a year and a half, right?
Yeah.
And so I would say that almost all of those people did not resume paying rent. Like that wasn't a thing. And so that didn't end, by the way, till December 31st, 2022.
Right,
so
right.
we're only in the year. So now all the courts are backed up.
Yeah.
Everything's backed up, right? So now that's why I say I'm in a construction company again, because now those tenants also, by the way, treated my properties poorly.
Yeah.
I don't mind saying that,
Yeah.
right? The people who we just gave money to, they weren't kind.
We had similar experiences.
Yeah, we did.
And
unfortunately.
so it was either, hey, I'm going to dump 20 into it, 20 grand over a bunch of homes, dump 20 into it, or I could dump 30 into it and rake off all the equity that all the prices are. And so it was either I'm out a bunch of money or I take it. And so I weighed that pretty quick and said, take the money. And also lending outperforms your rentals by a lot, like a lot. So your rentals probably, like cash on cash, like at the value of the home, probably make you 6 or 7% return. Now you're leveraged, so like your money to money is a little bit different. So, but now you get so much equity. Like, well, so what do you do when you have a home that you've got $100,000 of equity in? Now you're looking at your equity and you're realizing that you're only moving your equity at 8% or something like that. Where now you can take the equity and now you can do it into another vehicle, which for me is lending. People have other vehicles, but for me, I've learned to lend my money at by 20, with different strategies, 20, 30, 40%, which just crushes the rental.
Yeah.
So for me, it was, I didn't have to get free and clears because they became an inefficient vehicle.
Okay.
And so now I never, it's good to have a couple free, but I don't pay them off quicker. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a website for your lending company?
Yeah. I should have got to remember it. It's lendingtorva.com.
Thank you, brother. Lendingtorva.com.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, we'll pop that in there as well. So,
And also maybe, I can't remember, did we already mention your mastermind group that you have?
No.
Is that open to?
No, it's not really open right now.
Okay.
So we don't really take, haven't taken people in there in a while, probably in a year.
Okay.
So we'll do something next year, but.
Okay.
Now, are you talking about, because you have two, right? So you have like,
I have a local one.
yeah.
Yep, that is, and that one is local to Richmond. Anybody come, it's super cheap. I think it's like $15 a night, and I buy you a drink. And so we do. It's been meeting for 20 years. I've been running it for maybe 6 or 7.
Okay.
And it's the second Wednesday of every month.
Okay. Okay. And that's here in Richmond.
Here in Richmond.
And how can they find that?
TheRichmondRing.com.
TheRichmondRing.com. Yep. Tim, I'll pop that in there too, please. And then, so your elite is something that is invitation only and all that good stuff. Commercial versus residential.
I think it depends on where you are in your own personal wealth curve. I attribute almost all of my personal wealth to buying single family homes. And so it's hard for me not to say, go do that. Now, I think once you obtain a certain level of wealth, you get into tax problems where now you got to go buy bigger things. And so whether it's a lake house or beach house or a condo or multifamily, or you need those tax deductions, because I'm just opposed.
What a great problem.
Yeah. It's a first world problem.
Yeah.
But I always tell people this. I always tell you it's your obligation to take care to do the tax deductions. And some people don't understand that. But I tell them that the U.S. government raised their hand. They said, okay, this is what we can't do as the government. So we are going to subsidize the spots where we need the investors. And single family homes is a great example of that. Like, can you imagine a world where the government ran all the housing for the rentals? My God, it'd be like the Eastern Bloc, where we'd have all these block buildings, and like, how depressing would that be? So what they've done is they've said, okay, we know we can't do it, which is one of the rare things I agree with on our government sometimes. But they say they're going to incentivize me to go do this because they need me to do it. And so me taking the tax advantages, and now I'm creating jobs for all those people. I'm doing what they asked me to do. And I think it's your obligation. I always tell people, hey, the tax code is like 4,200 pages long. The first 400 are all the rules, and the next 3,600 are all the reasons not to pay attention to the first 400. And you got to learn them both.
Hey, so we had to take a brief pause there because my wife had to step out for an appointment that she couldn't miss. We ran a little bit over, but I'm going to wrap it up because we've got some stuff that we really want to get to and want to make sure that you guys are educated on. I mean, Rich is just such a wealth of knowledge. Just want to make sure everybody gets as much as they can out of this conversation. So again, thank you, Rich. And so she didn't just like disappear.
She's running a business, right?
The rapture. We were left behind.
Rapture.
Rich. I shouldn't joke about that. So, let's get back. Let's get back into the lending piece for just a second here. So, you at what point did you transition to lending?
I was deep into the IRAs early in my career. I was all about self-directed IRAs and self-directed IRAs for my kids. And so we went down that rabbit hole, and I was investing for quite a while, maybe as early as maybe 4th year in the business. It took me a while to figure out what that was. And so I was investing in the IRAs consistently throughout it, but it wasn't until I was selling all the homes, and now I really had just this huge surplus of cash, and I just became more and more comfortable. And my nature is just to go faster and faster and harder and harder. So it was when we transitioned out of the buying all the homes, all the money that's kind of out on the street starts to come back in, and now you have all this money, and of course, sitting in the bank account, it is the most inefficient place. And I started off small, just 1 or 2. It was actually pretty scary when I was putting out big chunks of money like that. But it has been fantastic. I've never lost money on a rental. I've always been able to, you can hold it long enough to get rid of your mistakes. I have definitely lost money on flips. It's definitely happened. And I've never lost money on a loan. And I think it's worth noting that.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've done a fair amount of them at this point.
Okay. And we've got that website. Yeah, cool. And so interest rates, you have a unique perspective on.
Yeah, and I'm going to caveat it by saying it's just my opinion. It's just me sitting around. But we all know what the problem is inventory, right? So there's no inventory. There's still buyers that want to go out and buy. That hasn't gone away. People still move. That still happens. So our real problem right now is inventory. And what happened in 2008, 2009 was all this inventory coming to the market, and now it gets flooded, and the that's what happened. So I'm trying to envision a scenario in which the Fed lowers the rate. They've been teasing us on it. The market's doing great today. But in an environment, if the economy is running hot, they won't raise the interest rate. It doesn't make any sense to do that. They should keep them up. So the only reason that they would lower them is because unemployment has started to pick up and then we're into some type of a little bit of a recession, right? So we go in, so unemployment will go up in the scenario that we see the Fed will actually drop the rates. So, but when the Fed drops the rate, they're going to uncork all the pent up people who haven't been able to put their houses on the market, because people aren't selling their homes because it doesn't make any sense. They have to downgrade unless they're moving. There's no more, I'm living in this neighborhood in the city and now I'm going to go move to that neighborhood. And the only reason they haven't sold and captured their perceived wealth, and I say perceived because equity is only perceived until you get it in your bank account. So they can't capture their wealth. Well, what environment would create all that stuff to come back to the market? Lower interest rates. So if the Fed is in a spot where unemployment goes up, which means jobs, which means now people are going to have to sell their house because they don't have a job. They're going to see all the equity. So those people are definitely going to put their houses on the market. But now the people have been waiting for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years to go back, right? Because we were raising the interest rates before the whole COVID and now, so the people that are locked in will be free to move. And so what are they going to do? I think they're going to take all their money. That's what I would do, right? And so I think you'll have a flood of homes come back to the market because now they can go up in the neighborhood with the money that they've received. And it'll only be the people that can achieve it who do it first as well, right? Because they'll be the first ones in. But if you get that rush because interest rates go down, you actually crash the real estate market because the demand, I don't think, will change a whole lot because people already want to buy houses. So the lowering of the rate, maybe a little uptake in demand, but it's going to only come from the people that sell that create the demand, right? And so
you don't think home prices are going to skyrocket if rates come down
I think it could go the other way.
You do?
I do.
Interesting.
Only if it brings the inventory back. You know, so that's just I'm not an economist.
No, it's interesting because I was listening to a PBD. Patrick Bet-David was talking about this like today. If interest rates went from where they are to 5% today, there would be a flood, right, of sellers, of home sellers. But prices have not come down considerably. They haven't come down really at all in the Richmond market. Yeah. So you don't think the demand would outweigh the supply? You think the pent up demand of sellers that are waiting to hit the market is bigger than the demand of buyers?
Well, don't forget the only reason that the Fed would reduce it, other than just being greedy, would be in an environment that the economy was struggling, right? So now you got unemployment, you got uncertainty, you've gotten the demand will naturally decrease from the people looking.
Okay. Yeah.
The demand will come from the people selling.
Yeah. I got you. Yeah, that makes more sense. Do you? So a little bit of a conspiracy theory here, but I can't. You know, I tend to feel like the government creates the inflation, and then they have a solution for all the Fed, right? And all the printing of all the trillions of dollars, and then they have a solution for the problem. But I don't like the solution for this problem because, I mean, in your scenario, actually, if home prices come down, then, which I hate to say this because, of what I do for a living and my clients, but they're unaffordable for a lot of people. First-time home buyers are, I mean, they're pretty much priced out. In certain markets, they are absolutely priced out. And then you got to get mom and dad to come in and get creative and all this stuff. So do you think there's anything to this? There's like this Agenda 2030 out there, and where by 2030 we'll own nothing and we'll like it, and you got BlackRock, which I think they're actually selling. I hear a lot of these institutional investors are selling right now, but they bought up a lot of neighborhoods, a lot of single family properties all across the country. What is your opinion on just where we are and just home prices being unaffordable for the average person right now?
Well, I think there's a battle going on in Wall Street, right? So government's part of it. right? Fed's not really the government, but like it's really the big money people that are swaying the things. And if we're going to go down the rabbit hole a little bit, I think that the government creates the things that we have. I think if I were big business, I often try to put myself in this. What would I want? I'd want to own the United States housing market. That seemed like a good play. And so I can definitely see where it's lining it up for big business to come in and own almost everything. And just this week, there's legislation that was put on the floor, both House and the Senate, to make it so that within 10 years, all those firms have to sell it back, that they have to liquefy, they're not allowed to buy anymore. So there's going to be a fight on what that. But I am definitely a believer. We see it even in our own market, although Richmond has been insulated compared to some of the other markets. You see the big buyers that came in and bought it up. You know, I think another thing they're doing with the high interest rates is they're wrecking commercial. And I think it's intentional. And I actually think they're doing it. I think they're doing it because they're trying to get rid of the regional banks. America's very unique in that we have, I think it's around 4,500 regional banks. That's not the way it is in most of the world. In most of the world, there are only a couple national banks, right? So if I were a bank, if I was Wells Fargo, I'd be looking down at the 4,500 saying like, how do I get them? And here's how I get them. Most of the commercial asset is held at the regional level. Like Wells Fargo has no exposure to the commercial. Well, they have some, of course, but the regional ones can't handle the hit. And so it just like we saw a couple of collapses with SVB and I forget the other ones. We saw 2 or 3 collapses last year. Like it's the banks with big banks win if the regional bank goes under. And so now the commercial is going to have really a lot of trouble to refi. And now the regional banks are getting trouble. And then, we have to bail them out. You go to sleep on Friday, you know, in your local bank, and then you wake up and it's a Wells Fargo. But I would say that we're definitely in a world where the banks are consolidating everything.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. Is there an opportunity in that for the local investor, the local single family, you know, or multifamily, right, investor?
For sure. I was reading some Wall Street Journal article. I can't remember what it was. It actually passed to me by somebody else. And it was, in 4 years, there's going to be a massive desire for office space. It's actually going to outpace what's there now, which is kind of contrarian to what we're seeing now, but that's the prediction. And so you're going to have this period where the commercial goes in the toilet, but you have a horizon of 4 years where you see it's going to be really strong. So I think people like us, and we're the small ones in the game, we're going to be able to go pick off some buildings. I think that if it's a good property and a good location, like that does matter. And then, but the commercial are going to have to sell because they get in trouble. You'll need your own access to money. It won't come from the banks. That'll be the key. But there's going to be a lot of opportunities there.
Crazy things going on. So
it's fun times.
I agree. No, I agree. It's what do they say that most millionaires and billionaires are born during a bust, not a boom. And it's crazy to watch the stock market. I mean, it's just crazy to watch. You know, another all-time high. Yesterday looks like we're headed towards another all-time high. I mean, you know, I don't know if it just makes me nervous. Like looking at that, it's like almost vertical. It's just bonkers.
It has to be a bubble, right? It has to be.
Right.
But I've been saying that for like 2 years, and they have masterfully kicked the can. But I feel like they've been doing that since the 80s.
I'm just going to keep buying real estate.
I think that's right. You have to own, and especially in a world if they're going to you don't own anything and you're going to like it. I just want to be the person who owns a little bit because I'm ahead of everybody else. That's right. That's the best I can do.
I 100%, and I think that's a great way to kind of wrap up here, Rich. And listen, if you didn't, you know, take away, I mean, I've got a page full of notes on top of all these questions here. And, you know, one of the things that Rich said early on was it is so important to get in the room. You know, proximity matters. And sometimes you got to fight to get in those rooms. Sometimes you got to pay to get into those rooms, but you got to do whatever you have to do. If you're not where you want to be, you're probably just missing out on a relationship or two. And you got to get outside your circle. And sometimes you have to actually, you know, say bye to some relationships that may even be holding you back. So Rich, I just want to say thank you so much for covering. I know
This was
you're
great.
busy.
I really enjoyed it.
Same here.
I really enjoyed it.
We're just grateful to be, in your circle, and we're going to try to get, in your circle even deeper if you'll let us. But thank you, sir.
Yeah, absolutely.
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays.
Get in the room. Proximity matters. We'll see you next time.